The most violent era in Medellín began when Pablo Escobar, a low-level smuggler turned politician, decided that Colombia's future would be bought or blasted into shape. This is the true-life chronicle of how one man's empire of cocaine upended a nation and sparked a century-defining manhunt. By the late 1970s, Escobar had built a trafficking pipeline to the United States that would, by the mid-1980s, supply an estimated 80% of the world's cocaine. He invested in barrios and philanthropy to cultivate loyalty. He also perfected a brutal calculus, plata o plomo, silver or lead. The Colombian state found itself squeezed between bribes and bullets. In 1982, Escobar's bid for legitimacy reached its apex when he won a seat as an alternate in Colombia's Congress. The country's elites recoiled. The turning point was the April 30, 1984 assassination of Justice Minister Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, a prosecutor who had publicly accused Escobar and others of trafficking. Lara's murder ignited public outrage and forced the government to confront a cartel that answered only to profit and survival. Escobar responded to pressure with a strategy of terror. He helped create Los Extraditables, a cartel front that campaigned to block extradition to the United States. When negotiations and bribes failed, the cartel escalated. Judges, politicians, police, and civilians became targets. The 1989 assassination of presidential candidate Luis Carlos Galen shocked Colombia and cemented the cartel's place as a political force willing to kill to shape a nation's laws. One of the darkest single acts tied to the Medellín Cartel was the bombing of Avianca Flight 203 on November 27, 1989, which killed 110 people. Colombian investigators linked the atrocity to narcotics traffickers seeking to influence public life and eliminate opponents. The bombing and the public wave of killings underscored the cartel's preferred method, terror in the open to intimidate a reluctant state. The United States increased pressure. Cocaine money meant international reach, and the DEA worked with Colombian units to track shipments and suspects. By 1989, the government created a specialized unit, the Search Block, to pursue Escobar. As the manhunt intensified, alliances shifted. Rival cartels, most notably Cali, and shadowy groups tied to victims of Escobar's violence formed ad hoc coalitions. One such vigilante formation, known as Los Pepes, pursued Escobar's associates mercilessly. Historians and journalists later documented how parts of the security apparatus and rival traffickers tacitly cooperated in this campaign, a murky convergence of state and extra-legal force that blurred lines between law enforcement and revenge. Escobar's tactics only grew more audacious. He ordered car bombs in downtown Bogotá, attacked public buildings, and openly declared war on extradition. Meanwhile, his urban charisma remained palpable in Medellín, where he funded housing projects and soccer fields, cultivating the image of a Robin Hood to many impoverished residents. After years of cat and mouse, the net finally closed. By 1991, Escobar had surrendered on terms that landed him in his self-designed prison, La Catedral, a gilded compound where he continued to run his empire. Pressure mounted again, and when authorities moved to transfer him to a conventional facility in 1992, Escobar escaped. On December 2, 1993, intelligence from phone tap operations and relentless groundwork by the Search Block located him in a modest middle-class neighborhood in Medellín. A rooftop shootout ended with Escobar dead. Official reports state he was killed by police gunfire. Some argue he took his own life to avoid capture. What is indisputable is that his death marked the collapse of the Medellín Cartel's dominance. But the story is not a tidy victory. The Escobar saga exposed a conspiracy of corruption and fear that reached into politics, business, and law enforcement. It transformed Colombian society, prompting reforms, a reconfigured security strategy, and international cooperation against drug trafficking. Decades later, the scars remain: mass graves, displaced families, and a lesson about how illicit wealth can bend a state toward violence. This is the true account of how one criminal empire rewrote a nation's history and how a coalition of investigators, rivals, and victims ultimately brought it down.